Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear viewer, wherever you may be. I hope hope things are as well as can be with you at the present moment. Bit of background. I started with board games, the old Avalon Hill, War and Peace, and Napoleon. Bought myself this little book that I found in a bookshop. Let's see if we can't swing up here. Napoleon's Campaign in Miniature, something of a classic, I believe, by Bruce Quarry, because the dust cover's long since evaporated. And reading through this, I came across, terrible camera work, came across these sorts of pictures. You can see how old it is, that the pages are falling out, and I found such really inspiring. I think by the look of these, they look like first gen minifigs, the ones you used to have to snip. They used to come in like 5 in a row, and you used to have to get your pliers out and snip them into individual figures. Again, forgive the shoddy camera work, but you get the idea. And so the thought came to me, well, could I possibly, with the board games, play out the actual battles using miniatures? Because I'd read about, all the different troop types and cavalry types and different types of artillery. And this book contained these sorts of things, black and white pictures with some information about what colour they were, what facings they had. Now you've got to remember, when I started this collection in I think it was about the mid-1980s, there was no internet. So books like this were like, where I was, like gold. I lived in country Victoria, 2.5 hours from Melbourne. In those days, there was no such thing as ordering figures direct online. You bought them from a hobby shop who had them shipped in from overseas. Hence why often on websites you'll see the cost of postage described as shipping, because not that long ago everything came in presumably a container on a boat. Airmail was the exception, not the rule, and it was the hobby shop that bought in bulk from your miniature supplier. And so if you wanted miniatures, you went to your hobby shop. There wasn't that much available in what I would call hard reference material. Books like these back then were like gold. Now, of course, you had miniature war games and War Games Illustrated magazine, when you could find them, where I was in Australia anyway. You could only get them from a newsagent, and you'd usually have to ask the newsagent to get them in, and you were lucky if you got them 6 months after they were published. So little books like these, and you can see this poor old thing's taken a battering. These were like absolute gold. But of course the information they contained, at times perhaps a bit incomplete, and also the information they contained, of course, in the space of 40 years, we've learnt so much more. People have done so much more research in particularly non-English sources, so that we know so much more now. For example, back then, I think, again, only my own experience, but I don't think I ever saw a Russian battalion with more than one flag, whereas now we know that most of them carried 2. Likewise, some other nations, Spanish sometimes carried 2, etc., etc. This book in much better condition, again, an absolute gold mine. But again, you will occasionally, I'll come across pictures and information, even in a book as reputable and as good as this, And now some of it is actually, I wouldn't say wrong, but we've got more information that shows that some of the things aren't quite incorrect. I know that's splitting hairs, but it's just simply a case of more information. And of course, don't forget, different authors have different opinions. I've got, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I've got Osprey books that directly contradict each other. Yeah, so back then you had a choice of, or I had a good old choice of minifigs or minifigs, which was the second generation figures. I think Essex was available here in Australia. I think though mostly in Sydney. I could be wrong. As I say, I lived out 2.5 hours from Melbourne, so the minifigs came in packs of eight infantry, 4 cavalry, and the command packs were 3 cavalry command, usually a bugler, drummer, and standard bearer. And the infantry command packs were 6 figures, usually 2 drummers, 2 flag bearers, and 2 officers. And it didn't matter what nationality they were. I understand now there's quite a debate about what, or perhaps even established that a lot of units didn't actually carry flags. Strikes me as a little strange that I would have thought that they would have, it may not necessarily have been their regimental colour or king's colour or whatever, but I find it strange they wouldn't have carried something on a flagpole, for the simple reason that on a battlefield full of smoke and confusion and noise, before the days of telecommunications, etc., often the flag would be a rallying point for the battalion, or also let a messenger know where the commanding officer was. So if you wanted to, get Battalion A to move over to Point Z, you had to find the commander. So I find it dubious that they didn't carry something simply to identify where the command centre was and as a rallying point, etc., etc. Now, maybe I'm clutching at straws. Who knows? Who cares? I might make this the last 15mm video for a while. They don't tend, or I don't seem to have the talent to photograph them well or camera them all that well. You don't want to get too close to them. I think they look quite okay, tabletop standard. But my 15mm have always been probably the way a lot of people would do their 6mm. I'll do a, down there, Jimmy. It's very much a block sort of painting technique. No washes, no highlighting. Bright colours, simple but effective, hopefully nice, clean lines. Say, for example, what's the sort of thing I'm talking about? Let's have a look at some Dutch Belgians. Now, instead of actually trying to paint the little crest on the helmet, that's just a little round daub of gold paint or bronze paint. So if you look a bit like, as I say, people might do 6mm. So if you get up real close, and I have seen people that will actually paint the tiny little emblems and things on their figures. I can't do that. I've never been able to do that. So I'm very much an impressionist, I suppose, from 12 inches away, tabletop standard. Doesn't mean I just slop paint on and hope for the best. But really, for figures this size, my eyesight would never have been able to do it. And I am rapidly approaching my 70s. My eyesight isn't what it was. I'm starting to get the shakes, so I'm often painting. I'll have the brush in this hand, and I've actually got to put this hand here to paint. And also, as you can see, I'm starting to get these funny lumps on my fingers and hands. Over here, you can see there's one there, and it's actually bent the finger right over. I can't actually straighten that up. Not painful, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but just, yeah, Van Gogh AA. Other things, let's see, let's try and put this here. Now, this is a bunch of Portuguese. Now, by rights, you might look at that and say, oh, hang on, those shoulder straps, they're all bright yellow. They're meant to be blue with yellow fringes. Now, back in time, I would paint those yellow shoulder straps and then with another brush, put a very fine blue line down the middle, and it would come out right. I'm finding now you can see the size of the figure next to my thumb. We're talking absolutely tiny dimensions here. I'm finding now I can't do it. So it's a bit of a case of close enough, good enough. Okay, so there you have it, a bit of 15mm progress. Ralph, if you're watching it all, I might have a go at doing a battle report, as I say, a Blucher battle report. I've got 300 point Peninsular Army, 300 point 1815 campaign army, and I've got a bucket of French, and they're all done and painted, so we might just have a go and we'll just see how we go. Although, Ralph, I think you're still the past master of the battle report. Oh, now just one other thing. I mentioned, I think it might have been a previous video about how often with 15mm you take, it was de rigueur that if you didn't have a particular type of figure available, you took what was closest to it and painted it up as such. So, for example, here in my avant-garde Jaegers, now they're actually not avant-garde Jaegers, avant-garde light infantry. That's actually a Jaeger figure with the blanket roll. By rights, they shouldn't have a blanket roll, but there's no other figure available. So close enough, paint her up in the avant-garde light infantry, all black, with the, hopefully you can see that, the green stripe, etc. And away you go. And you often used to do that back in the times when this was started. Your Portuguese were, or mostly British, was a different colour scheme, etc. And even now, with the Warlord Epic range, there's an interview with John Stallard where he says, if you want Belgians, just take your British and give them blue coats. And he gives a couple of other examples like that. The other examples escape me. But yeah, so it's still going on. And as he says, well, at that scale, yes, you can get away with it. Whereas perhaps in 28mm or higher, you wouldn't be able to do so. All right, I think that's everything. I'll try and stop rambling. Now stay safe, everybody, and talk to you again soon. Bye for now.